This is Gabriela on the scene today with Talk Network Radio. We have a real treat for you just around the corner, and that is Empowered Living with Jeff Byrd. Jeff is the owner of Jeffrey Byrd Coaching, and he will be coming to you weekly to teach you more about empowered living.
Hello and welcome. I'm Jeff Byrd with Jeffrey Byrd Coaching, and this is Empowered Living. I'm so glad that you tuned in and are joining us today because I've got a topic that's very important and that will make a big difference in your life if you apply it. And the topic is the extra mile, going the extra mile. The title of today's show is The Treasure of the Extra Mile. That's a phrase that came to me as I was thinking about this because there can be so much treasure for you and I hidden in the extra mile. Now, when we think about going an extra mile, most of the time we're not thinking about a literal extra mile. But now, from what I understand, that was the case when this idea first came about. The earliest record I know of going the extra mile was when Jesus said in Matthew 5:41, "Whoever forces you to go with him 1 mile, go with him 2." Now, what he was referring to, I found out when I started studying and digging into this a little bit, is back in his day, Rome ruled the world. And if a Roman soldier got tired of carrying his gear, he could grab any civilian off the street and force them to carry his gear with him for a mile. It may have been more like 1,000 steps, but still, you got to think about you're carrying a soldier's gear for 1,000 steps. Now, if you're going another 1,000 steps, now you've got 2,000 steps out carrying a soldier's gear, and you got 2,000 steps back. And if you're like me, I've got a Fitbit on my arm here. I'm tracking my steps these days and trying to get 10,000 steps a day. And it takes a little effort to do that. So that 4,000 steps, that could take a little chunk out of your day, especially if you weren't used to carrying a heavy load and you had to carry the soldier's gear with you. So, this is the reason that a lot of people don't want to go the extra mile. It's an inconvenience. It's time consuming. It could be a burden. And, but there's a lot of value to going the extra mile. And it's not just value that the other person gets. It can come back to us in spades, which is what we're going to look at today. So we want to look at some of the returns that come back to us from going the extra mile. Recently, I heard of a study that people did, and it's based on what's called the law of reciprocity. The law of reciprocity. And that law simply says that if you do something good for somebody else, most people, just by natural human nature, will want to do something good back for you. And one of the studies they did was with waitresses. And what they did is when a waitress would bring the check to a table, if she were to bring a mint for every person in the party, her tips went up by 3.3%. And that was if she brought 1 mint. Now, here's the amazing thing. If she brought 2 mints for each person in the party, her tips went up by 14.1%. Now, that's huge. That's an incredible return on the investment. Of a mint and getting 14.1%. There's very few things I think that we could invest in and immediately get 14.1% back. That would be a very, very good investment. But that's what happens with this law of reciprocity. So going this extra mile can have some amazing returns. Chuck, could you scroll down a bit? Sorry, we're getting the teleprompter to catch up with where we are right here. Forgive me. It's moving just a tad slowly. We'll be there in just a second. So a lot of people never want to put in the extra effort that's required to go the extra mile because of that upfront, what they have to pay in up front. But what they're not looking at is the return that comes to us. And this is just kind of the way that the universe is made. This is the way God designed it to be, that we put in up front, but then we get a return. So there's a law called the law of increasing returns. And the law of increasing returns says that we put in on the front end, and then we get way more on the back end than we put in on the front end. And you could think about a farmer. This is a great illustration. A farmer in the spring, he has to plow, he has to create and mend fences, he has to sow seed, prepare the ground, he has to tend the field. And he does all of that without any compensation or reward. He just has to do that. That's his investment. So he makes all of this investment, but then the universe and our nature is so designed, the way God made it, that if he does that, if he does all the work up front in the spring and he guards it from insects and from drought in the summer, then what happens in the fall is he gets this hugely increased return, up to maybe 30, 60, 100, maybe 1,000-fold more than what he actually put in. He doesn't just get that original seed back. He gets that and a huge return above that on it because of what he put in up front. So when we think about going the extra mile, we need to think that way. We need to think, okay, it's not just about what I'm giving, and we can do that just out of a value or a goodwill towards other people, but it's like when we do give, it always comes back in spades. You know, we just can't lose by doing something to help other people. Going the extra mile can also keep us from losing what we already have. We need to think about that sometimes. If we're just doing the minimum that's required or expected, then that gives a wide open door for somebody else to come in and do better, to go the extra mile and to take what we already have. Some years ago, I worked at a medical equipment company, and prior to my coming on board there, they told me the story of losing one of their major accounts. It was the spina bifida account, and the way that they lost that account was one of the individuals who was a client that had spina bifida. They were in a wheelchair, and they blew out a wheelchair tube, and it was right at closing time. And the technician who was on duty refused. He had other plans and he wouldn't postpone them, refused to go out and replace. It was about a $3 inner tube that went in that wheelchair tire. He could have been done with that there and back just super quickly, but he would not go do it. And because of a $3 inner tube on a wheelchair tire, they lost the entire account. That person who didn't get their tire fixed, they told the organization cut all ties with this company, and they lost thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars of business over a $3 inner tube tire because somebody wouldn't go the extra mile. When I was new in marketing, and it was a job I got, and I'd never been in marketing, never been really in direct sales before, didn't quite know what I was doing, but I did know this. I knew who did know what they were doing. And often they were having events, having open houses, hosting meetings. And so what I would do is I would arrive a little bit early, and I would see if there was any way I could help them. Because a lot of times, they were doing things at the last minute. There were loose ends. They needed chairs set up or a table or a punch bowl carried or whatever it was that they happened to be doing. And I found out by doing that if I showed up early and I helped the people who knew everybody who were hosting these events, and I did something, then they appreciated that so much. First of all, we became friends, and some of those friends that I made then, I'm still friends with today. And this was over a decade ago. Some of the friends that I made just by doing that, by showing up early and helping them out, we're still friends with, got a whole bunch of them. And, but then what happened is they knew everybody. And as we became friends and they learned more about what I was doing, they would then make introductions for me and introduce me to new people who then could benefit me and who I could do business with. So another illustration is a friend of mine who shared a story recently. I read it on Facebook. She had put it out there. And what happened was she's very successful now, but some years back she was not. And she just had pennies in her pocket and, a little bit of change. And she was out pounding the pavement looking for work. And as she would go about this day, when she would leave her apartment to go out and was looking for work, she would pass a homeless man who was sitting on the park bench. And so she would very often just take the little bit of change she had and go and get him a cup of coffee. And she would come back and give him a coffee and sit there for a few minutes and have a coffee with him. And what happened is, many years later, after she had lots of work and was doing very well, just recently, she went to a large organization to put in a bid on a coaching job that they needed some training for their team. And when she got there to put in this bid, one of the guys who was one of the decision makers, a high up in the company, he recognized her. And he recognized her as the lady from the park that used to buy coffee for the homeless man. And when he recognized her, they had a moment of kind of reunion there and recognition. And because he knew what she had done for the homeless man, he knew about her heart. He knew kind of what she was like. And she ended up getting the bid because they trusted her. Because if she cared enough to buy a cup of coffee for the homeless man and sit for a few minutes with him and drink the coffee and reach out in friendship to him, then she was the kind of person who was going to take care of their team and their clients and really add value to them. So it pays to go the extra mile. Now, on the front end, she never had any idea that she was going to get a large contract back from that. She just did that because, hey, why not? She could do something nice. She could go an extra mile. She could buy the homeless man a cup of coffee. It was within her ability to do it, and why not do it? So she did, and then it came back in spades.
Jeff will be back shortly to wrap up today's message. This is Gabriela, still on the scene today with Talk Network Radio. If you're just tuning in, you're listening to Empowered Living with Jeff Byrd. If you've missed any part of today's message, you can hear it again online, as well as the entire archive of Empowered Living at www.talknetworkradio.com or search keyword #Empowered Living. We would like to acknowledge our music partners, Sound Ideas for Corporate to the Max and Kevin MacLeod for Airport Lounge. Any scriptures read during this broadcast are from the New American Standard Version of the Holy Bible. If you would like to learn more about Jeffrey Byrd Coaching, visit www.jeffbyrdcoaching.com. That is JEFFBYRD coaching.com. Do a Facebook search for @CoachingRocks or drop Jeff a line at jeff@jeffbyrdcoaching.com. Again, JEFFBYRD coaching.com. Let Jeff's Coaching Rocks be the building blocks of your empowered success. Now, let's go back to Jeff for the rest of today's message.
So there's a couple of takeaways I want to talk about on going the extra mile here. Number one is going the extra mile sets us apart and gets us noticed. In a world full of mediocrity, if you go above and beyond, you're going to get noticed. Number two, it provides meaningful benefits to those whom we serve, and that makes us indispensable in our professions. Number three, it keeps us from losing what we have, as I mentioned before, with the silly little $3 inner tube on the wheelchair tire. Just doing that small gesture that nobody knew would have any consequences could have cost them from losing thousands and thousands of dollars in business with the organization that cut them. Number four, it gives us preference during tough times. Think about this. If you're the person who consistently goes the extra mile and looks out and sees what the needs are and goes and meets them, if there comes a difficult time, a hard time, and people are going to get laid off, who do you think's going to be up first for layoff? The person who goes the extra mile or the one who doesn't go the extra mile? That person who goes the extra mile has safeguarded their position by going the extra mile. Number five, it keeps us growing and improving. It keeps us always looking for ways to get better. As we see what the needs are around us and we look for ways that we can meet them, it keeps us looking for ways to get better. And sometimes we develop ourselves in order to meet a need that we see around us. Number six, it develops the quality in us of taking initiative. And that is an essential leadership quality. You never met a leader who wouldn't take initiative. So when we see a need and we step up and go, hey, I can do that. I can meet that. Hey, let me learn about that so I can help with that. That's initiative. And so we're going to stand out as leaders if we take initiative to learn something, to do something that's going to be beneficial to other people. Number seven, it opens the doors to new relationships and opportunities. Okay. It's, when you do that, just like my friends that I mentioned, when I went and helped them, it created a new relationship and friendships that have lasted over a decade have come out of it. And the other thing is that then they introduced me to other people who could help me in the business I was doing, and it created new opportunities for me. Number eight, it gains respect and cooperation from other people. Zig Ziglar once said that we will never lack for people to help us get what we want if we help them get what they want. So when we do that, that law of reciprocity kicks in. When we help